Hello and welcome to Brass Bites. My name is Andy and I'll be your host. In today's episode, I had the great pleasure of spending time with the amazing tubist, Andy Cresci. Andy has been a professional musician since the age of 20, playing with orchestras from all around the UK, including the Scottish Opera Orchestra in Glasgow, and most famously for the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, of which he actually celebrates 35 years with the orchestra this year. Andy has guested with almost every orchestra in the UK and can be seen introducing the tuba on the Philharmonia's Guide to the Orchestra. Teaching is one of Andy's passions, as he teaches at the prestigious Wells Cathedral School, as well as the Royal Marine School of Music. So join us as we discover how he does it in episode 2 of Brass Bites. Good morning, Andy. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Andrew. I'm looking forward to having a little chat with you here.
Great. So welcome to Brass Bites. Let's go to the beginning. What inspired you to play music?
I think in my house where I grew up in a Welsh Italian family house. So music was always on the record player. You probably don't even know what a record player is, but it's the thing that spins vinyl. And it was nearly always Italian opera. That was my father's passion. So we were surrounded by music, and then the opportunity arose properly when I got to secondary school. I was very lucky. I went to Neath Boys Grammar School, and music was a very strong part. The school was really good for music and rugby, and the music teacher was absolutely inspirational. His name was John Jenkins, who became the music advisor for the county and he took us to the school's proms and Vienna, the music verein. As a kid, I played the cello at 12 years old in the music verein. So at school I was a cellist to start with. I was just handed the cello. I put my hand up to play the cornet and I got given a cello, and I loved it. Actually, it was great, and I sort of pursued my way through school as a cellist until I got to be about 15, 16, and I already knew I wanted to be a musician, so I decided I was going to go to music college, and everybody said, oh, you've got to have a second study instrument, and all my friends were brass players, so they said, well, come on, you can play the tuba, that's easy. So I thought, okay, I'll play the tuba, and they actually started me off amongst themselves, and then I got some lessons off a really good Welsh guy who was our local Perry called Idris Rees, and a couple of lessons to get started, and then he handed me over to Nigel Seaman, who in those days, Nigel, who's in the tuba world, is quite famous, I know. He was at Welsh Opera, so I had a few lessons off Nigel, and it was Nigel that persuaded me that I should probably change my college application from cello to tuba. But I'd been playing about 6 months at this point, so but the way he explained it to me was, well, look, you could go to college and probably make it as a professional cellist, and you'll play every note of every concert, or you could go to college as a tuba player, and if you're really lucky, you might get a tuba job, and you'll play in half the number of notes and get paid more. So what are you going to do? So that was my sort of introduction to, oh, maybe I should do this. And then, I quickly realised that the tuba was a lot of fun, and I've never lost sight of the fact that the tuba is a lot of fun. I think if you do lose sight of the humour of the tuba, you've got an issue. You should always remember that it's got to be funny at some point. Yeah, serious instrument, but also a lot of fun. So that was my start into music.
That's fantastic, and it's actually great to hear that you've had so much inspiration from Nigel. Nigel Seaman teaches at the Royal Welsh College of Music still, which is where I'm currently studying, and he actually teaches one of my housemates, which is great that he's still inspiring future generations. So it's really interesting to hear, like as a cellist growing up. So how has that affected your tuba playing? Like as an orchestral musician, sort of listening to various parts of the orchestra, are you more inclined to listen to the cello?
I think possibly, yeah. I'm always aware of what the cellos are doing, and we've always had this amazing cello section, and they are amazing, but they work so hard. But I think as a brass player, we should all learn to play a string instrument, because of the approach is different. It's good to have that insight into bowing. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating when you're sitting up there waiting for them to sort the bowing out. But if you have an understanding of really what they're trying to sort out, it actually makes you a bit more patient with it. So yeah, I think I'd like to think it's served me well, having been a string player at a reasonably good level before taking up my true vocation. In fact, I think when I retire, I don't know when that's going to be, but I think I'm going to start playing the cello again. I've got one ready. Let's put it that way, and I'll be able to play duets with my wife because she doesn't like tuba and viola duets. But maybe she does like it, but she's not that keen. I think viola and cello might be a lot more suitable.
Yeah, definitely. I actually learnt a little bit of viola last year for a teaching skills project where I had to teach my partner trumpet, and he taught me viola. But I've got very short arms, so it didn't end up very well. So yeah, in England, where you are, you're about to go into another lockdown, and it's been quite a challenging year for everyone. And I know the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, where you work, you've been doing these live stream concerts, which have been fantastic. People should definitely check them out. Go to BSO Live. I think the tickets are £6 per stream.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, for the quality, it's absolutely fantastic. So how has the pandemic actually affected you as a musician, with your practice, with your work?
Well, when the pandemic kicked in for us, we were just about to perform Electra. So we'd done all the rehearsals and the dress rehearsal. And I spent about a month learning Electra because I didn't know it. So I was massively frustrated. But obviously I understood the situation. And we weren't able to perform it. So we went into the situation where BSO stopped altogether until from 17th of March, or maybe the 20th of March, I can't remember, to the very end of September. We didn't play together as an ensemble at all. And we weren't, because we were furloughed, we weren't allowed to work for the orchestra. So we couldn't even do stuff online together to promote the orchestra. We couldn't promote the orchestra in any way. We weren't allowed to because of the terms of the furlough. So during that period, yeah, at first motivation to practice was quite hard. I'll be truthful. And I'm a good practicer. I've always been a good practicer. But even I found it hard to get it out of the case every day and play. But what really kept me going is that the first thing I did on my way home when we got locked down is I went to the builder's merchant and bought a load of building materials to keep loads of because we have a little small holding, so I gave myself the opportunity to do loads of building projects. But I also went via PC World and bought a load of really good tech, knowing that my teaching would probably have to go online. And in the back of my mind, I'd always thought I wanted to do more online classes and master classes. So I just saw the opportunity to just embrace the whole online thing and to try and take it to the highest level I could. And believe me, tech for me was very low on my priority until that point. And I had to get our first trombone, Kevin Morgan. He had to talk me through how to switch the thing on practically. But now I've sort of become a bit of a Zoom expert, and it's okay. I think it's never quite as good as face-to-face lessons because you can't be in the room and you can't judge sound. But I really embraced it. All my teaching at the Marines went online. My teaching at Wells. But suddenly, because all these brass players all over the world were out of work, they're always sitting down thinking, well, what should we do during lockdown? So I was getting phone calls from all over the world. Can you help me with this? Can we have a look at doing the next diploma? Can we have a look at doing my degree recital? So suddenly, my teaching just exploded. And I didn't know, I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? But it was really, it kept me playing, because to teach well, I like to play in my lessons a bit. And to do master classes, which I've done quite a few of now online, I play a lot in those. So yeah, I've made myself play because of that, because that fear of not being able to do it. It's a really good inspirer, that, to make you practice. So that's what I've been doing in lockdown, teaching, and now obviously back to playing. We're playing 3 days a week, maybe. with the BSO. So that was going back to work was strange, but we had all this COVID secure stuff going on, which made me feel quite safe at work. I didn't feel uncomfortable with it at all. We're all 2 meters apart, which is a bit weird. So we've had to learn new radar for when to play, and that took us 2 or 3 weeks to really adjust to it. But
It's
yeah,
definitely been
that's been my lockdown.
yeah. It sounds like you've definitely used the time as effectively as you could. It's definitely been a time where we can reflect and learn new skills, which is kind of one of the inspirations for this channel. Um, so you mentioned your teaching, and I know that you're professor of low brass at the Royal Marine School of Music, and you work at Wales Cathedral School. And you also do master classes across the world. Like, for instance, the other day you were virtually in Colombia. Um,
Yeah.
Sort of, you must have a teaching philosophy. Um, uh, how has that actually inspired your own personal playing?
My teaching started, God, I mean, I've always taught, I've always enjoyed some teaching, but actually, I can remember, to my shame, at college, I can remember actually saying, or teach, I didn't go to the teaching classes, I can't believe I'm saying this online, but I can actually remember saying, oh, no, teaching is for failed players. Oh, for God's sake, I think, what? But now, having learned about teaching and really started to explore it in detail. And I've always done some teaching. My first proper teaching post was at a prep school, and I had to complete. I was starting kids off, 7-year-olds. As soon as they get their front four teeth, I was starting off loads of trumpets and cornets and tenor horn. I love starting kids on tenor horn, and I did 9 years of that. It was only one day a week, but it was a real eye opener because I didn't know how I did it, so I had to really explore my own playing, and I've continued to do that as I've gone on teaching at different places. When I took on the teaching post at the Royal Marines, I gave up the prep school. I just because as a full-time playing job, it's very hard to juggle everything. But I've I'm there teaching tuba and euphonium and buglers. I teach the buglers as well. But yeah, I really developed a method, and it reflected in my own playing because I had to develop around the same time that I was really getting going in my teaching. I hit a bit of a brick wall with my own playing, which was a shock. It sort of lined up with when life was really busy and I wasn't able to sort of tootle all day, and because prior to children and all those sort of things where your life gets hectic, I was just tootling around all day, so it was fine. I never did really know how to practice, but I played a lot. And so suddenly I had to work out what was wrong with my playing and why things that I'd taken for granted for years weren't working. So whilst developing that for myself, which was, we'll talk about it more, I know, the daily routine element of my practice, which I developed over a few years' time, which basically saved my playing, and it's given me a 40-year career. That actually then came across into my teaching, and it's now the most important thing I think I ever give to my students, because to start with, they will always work with my element of daily routine, which is about very disciplined practice, and gradually over the 2 or 3 years they will develop it and evolve it into their routine, and most of them still have some element of routine, not all, but most of them still do. And it's actually really nice to see it happening around the world now.
Yeah, it's definitely great to have a daily routine, sort of have consistency, and sort of maintaining chops is probably one of the most important things for a day-to-day musician. Um, yeah, so I've actually heard you go through the routine once before when I did my work experience in the participation department of the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. For those that don't know, in the office there's a live stream that you can hear from the concert hall that goes to the office,
Oh dear.
and that was on, and so yeah, it went on for hours and hours, days and weeks. Um, no, joking aside, you've definitely got a structured practice that is your that sets you up for a good concert. Could you just elaborate what your how you go about your daily routine?
Okay, but I'll give a tiny bit of background, which I've already said. Like, my own playing hit a bit of a wall, so I needed to dig myself out of that hole. So I then established what has become my daily routine. And the idea of the daily routine is to maintain your technical side of your playing, your chops, your stamina, your range, by doing a little bit of everything, a lot of it at the same time. So you're doing lots of things at the same time. So we are actually multitasking. I know it's quite hard for us, but we are multitasking while we're doing it. And what it does is it keeps your toolkit all in place, so that don't have to sort of stop say, sorry maestro, I get my high chops next week, or I get you can't do that. So the whole idea is that everything's more or less in place all of the time, and it's worked pretty well for me, and in teaching that it's worked well. So the idea is that within 20 minutes, you say you've heard my routine. I literally do that every playing day. I will do a daily routine. What it doesn't do is not making music. It's all technical. It's all about maintenance, range, flexibility, dexterity, scales, intonation. It's all about those things. But what it does is it stuffs your toolkit full of the things that enable you to make music. So at the end of that 20-minute span, I've got quite good at the scale cycles and all those things that you've heard me, rumble through. And it does definitely mean that your playing's in good shape, ready to make music. But you have to make music on top of that. All it does is keeps you in a good place. So the daily routine for me, it starts off with some scale cycles. So I'll play one octave, because it incorporates warming up. Otherwise, you've got to warm up as well. So the first few seconds or minute or so of the routine is warming up. Warming up, there's a lot of myths about warming up. People think they're doing an hour's warm up or half an hour's warm up. That's because really warming up doesn't take very long. But yeah, because they're tiny muscles, but you have to warm them up, but it doesn't take long. So the first few elements of few scales, which are middle register, they're getting you going. And by the time you play anything remotely high or low or loud, you're warmed up. So yeah, dispel that fact. What they're doing is a good practice routine rather than a long warm-up. And that's what it is for me. So I do a lot of scales, which I'll do them in lots of different articulations because I like to reinforce all the different note shapes. So I'll do a slurred, I'll do a staccatissimo, so short that you probably hardly would use it musically, but it's really good as an articulation builder. I'll do a rounded note shape, the one I call tau, which is like pizzicato, bum 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 do 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 do, and I'll do an absolute legato, but still struck, and I'll do all the scales, and I'll start from, fairly middle register, but I'll take that scale cycle up, doing each scale 4 times, rising in the semitone, until I can't go as high as I can go, and I'll do that every day, and then I'll do a slurring sequence, and that slurring sequence, the first one is leapfrog slurs. To me, that's a specific sequence of notes which misses some notes out, and it's about stamina. It's about keeping your embouchure strength, keeping your airflow working properly and accurately. So already you're doing several things at once. And obviously for me, I teach a thing called mechanics of slurring, and that reinforces the mechanics of slurring. It makes slurring easy. Then I'll do another slurring sequence, which moves away slightly from the strength side, but it moves more into the flexibility side. And that's called broken chord slurs. So it obviously doesn't keep missing so many notes out and things. And I'll do these sequences in the articulations as well. So I do them short, long, rounded. And then I'll do a scale cycle down. And that does exactly what it says. It goes all the way down until I can't go any lower. So I'll have gone as high as I can go, build lots of strength exercises, flexibility exercises, and then I'll take my scale cycle going down as low as I can possibly go every day. And what's happened for me over the years is when I went to college, I think I just about had a 3-octave range. Bear in mind I haven't been playing that long. E flat and F, we're talking in tuba terms here, I know, but high E flat, high F, they were pretty high for me. Whereas now, I've got more than another octave that's developed going up, And yeah, going down, low was always hard. I've always used to find low hard, but again now I can go well very very low until it runs out really, and so it becomes flapping in the breeze. Because I do it every day, it's there all the time. So that's the sort of essence of daily routine. Were you hoping I was going to play? Because I mean,
No,
I wasn't
no,
planning on it.
that's fine. I I do remember our head of brass at the Royal Welsh College is Roger Argente, and he has said to me before that you are an absolutely technical machine, and there's definitely a reason for it. You definitely work hard,
I work
properly
hard. Yeah.
hard every day, and you maintain it. And I think that's something that we can
On
all
the end of that
definitely learn
scale
from.
cycle, there's a whole multiple tonguing routine, which is probably what he's talking about. So I
Yeah,
will always practice the multiple tonguing side as well.
I mean we could all definitely take things from that, and I'll definitely be able to use some of that for my own trumpet playing and building my own routines, which is absolutely fantastic. So for tuba players, is there any specific books or education resources that they should be looking for to uh, be able to structure their practice in that way?
I think the way I practice applies to all brass instruments, and when I do master classes, it's always aimed at all brass. But when obviously through my teaching, where I teach tuba and youth most of the time these days, um, I always use, you know, big piles of music everywhere in this room. I always use Blazovic because I think simple is good. If you can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star perfectly, you're doing pretty well. And if you can play it perfectly every time, oh, that's the key, by the way. Uh, yeah, so I like to do things that are really pretty straightforward and simple, which expose what's not quite working in the sound or in the articulation. So Blazovic I use a lot as a tuba player. I use a Wesley Jacobs Low Register Studies book, which I've sort of taken apart and put it back together. I just use it. What am I trying to say? Yeah, I've changed it quite a lot, but we use that as a study book quite a lot because you have to be able to play low, you have to be able to read low. It's a progressive book, but I also use it to reinforce the breathing mechanism because one of the other things I go around doing a lot of is masterclasses on how to breathe properly. Because if, as a tuba player, you haven't sussed out how to breathe properly, you're really not in the game. You know, we literally shift more air than anybody else, and so we have to learn to relax because to relax to breathe is the key. So we learn to relax our body to get maximum air in, which means we can put maximum air out. So I spend a lot of time teaching people to breathe well for tubas and euphoniums, well, and all brass really. But those are probably some of the main study books I would use. We use Coprash a bit. We use Arban a bit. I dip into lots of different study books for certain elements. I wouldn't say, apart from Blazovic and Jacobs, the Wesley Jacobs, not Arnold Jacobs. Um, I think all the other books we just dip into because I know there's a specific study I want to expose them to or to use to help them through certain things that they find it hard. So yeah, so I wouldn't say any other books particularly. The music is there to be used uh, to achieve what you're trying to get from that student.
Definitely, that's something that a colleague of yours in my teacher Ross Brown, um, he definitely says something very similar. Make the music work for you, uh, not the music work you,
Mm.
um, which is very interesting. So still on the topic of sort of teaching, um, maybe for uh, can we go to sort of auditions? So you've done a number of successful auditions as you got your first job while still studying at the Royal Northern. Um,
Yeah.
so as an auditionee and also being on the panel of an audition panel, how what are you looking for from musicians as they present themselves in that setting?
I mean, as an auditionee, I haven't done that many auditions to be really honest. I was just very lucky that the ones I did do, I was successful in. Uh, as an I think preparation is the key to being a good auditionee. Planning how you're going to play, what you're going to play, and making sure that you can play to a good level under pressure. So you put the anxiety side of it into a box. That's another thing I work at a lot with my students, to deal with the performance anxiety side and still be able to perform well. That's so essential in an audition, because when you're on the panel, you're aware people are nervous, but the ones where you can forget about it, when you just enjoy listening to them, they're the ones you're really interested in, because through their daily job, they're going to be exposed to, highly sensitive bits where if they're suffering all the time and they're not able to put it in its box, it's a problem. So you really want people that can and learn to deal with it. I think at certain stages of everybody's career, performance anxiety becomes an issue, and you watch people put it in its box. I mean, I learned how to do it for myself, having gone from somebody that felt like I could play anything in front of anybody. I went through a horrible patch where I felt like I couldn't play anything at all, and I certainly didn't want to play in front of people, to now where I'm at the stage, and have been for many years, where yes, I'm aware of the nervous side, I'm dealing with it, and it's fine, it's in its box. So preparation is absolutely the key for any audition. You have to have the stamina to go through your solo works or whatever you've chosen to do, and then play a whole set of excerpts. And as a tuba player, get into the bloody auditions, one of the big problems, because you've usually got a big tuba, a little tuba, possibly these days a cimbasso. So you've got you've got everything but the kitchen sink with you. So you've got to work out how you're going to get there. You don't want to be stressed when you arrive. You don't want to be rushing. So there's all those elements that you need to have thought through, the logistics of it, good planning. And yeah, you've got to go in and play well. If you haven't researched your excerpts, and by researching your excerpts, I mean not just knowing your part, you want to know what everybody else is playing around you. Because when I'm on the panel, I'm always, usually the excerpts are from such big famous pieces, we on the panel know who's playing with you, and we expect you to know that as well. We expect the student to know exactly what's going on all around them, so you can't just learn your part. You need to learn everything around you. So you need the score, not the tuba part.
Definitely.
So that's how I would suggest people prepare for their audition.
Yeah, definitely. At college, we have the orchestral repertoire exams, where we have to play, and also we're heavily marked on our contextual knowledge of each excerpt, which is definitely something to think about. We get taught to listen to a minimum of 3 decent recordings, one from the UK, one from Europe, and one from the USA, because that's each of those places have orchestras have a different sound world, which you need to tap into. Sort of on that sort of topic, as a tuba player, you have to be able to adapt to various composers and styles of brass playing, from German composers to British composers and American composers. Sort of with your how do you approach changing from style to style? I know you've got a number of tubas that you might use, different mouthpieces, also a sort of mindset as well. There must be a few things that you do to be able to adapt to what you need to be able to play.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You do adapt. I mean, I certainly am. The instrument I'm play for any piece of repertoire is driven by what I think that composer was trying to achieve, and also what more or less they had around them at the time. So I will always try to use my small tuba. I've got a little tiny, where is it, over there, the little silvery tuba there. I love to use that for Berlioz, Mendelssohn, things like that. I'd love to use it more, but quite often you need other people to adapt around you as well. I like to change instruments driven by the repertoire and the composer. So there are pieces that I've never played on my small tubas, I've only ever played them on my big tuba. So I got caught out one day when I think we were on a park state somewhere, and I hadn't really checked the rep list, and there was a Romeo and Juliet chunk on it. And I realised I didn't have my C tuba on the lorry. So I had to play Romeo and Juliet on my E flat tuba. I'd never done it. My fingers didn't want to do it. It was a very strange scenario. So yeah, I'm very much driven by the composer. I like to play the right instrument for the right repertoire. But you are limited if the rest of your brass section are only sticking to one instrument or one set of instruments. It does limit you, and you have to accommodate that as well. I mean, people will swap sometimes, but they tend to like to play what they want to play. And I'll never tell somebody else what instrument they should be playing.
That's great. I think for trumpet players, especially in the UK, for orchestral rep, we'd think more about having a B flat and an E flat. I think that's just the British tradition, whereas in America they might predominantly use a C trumpet and then possibly use a B flat.
Works so well for certain rep, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting. But sort of on the mental side, is there something when you pick up that instrument, you go, right, I am playing this instrument, I've got to play it this way?
I think many years ago I did have to make those conscious decisions, whereas they have become pretty much fully automated now. I mean, certain repertoire I play with a lot of front, some repertoire I play with less front, or some very short notes or lengthen things in other rep. But to be honest, it's for me now that sort of happens in the background. It's sort of all automated and is just functioning. So I'd like to think that I don't need to dwell on that as much now, but I think at your age I probably did. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but when I was 20 I started at Scottish Opera. That was my first job. And I couldn't believe how short people played things in Verdi and stuff like that. I think, what is this? I wanted to play everything long and sonorously. And they were looking at me like I was an idiot. So I quickly learned that, okay, I'm going to play this short and fronty and, nick, 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 nick. And it fitted in quite well. I needed to have the instrument that would do it, which was the little silver thing. Perfect because we didn't have chimbassos in those days. Thank God. I hate the chimbasso. By the way, I'd like to personally say I hate the chimbasso. I'm happy to say that online. It should have stayed buried.
Yeah, that would be broadcasted to the world.
Yeah, that's fine. It should have stayed buried because it's not as good as most tubas are. But if you can get a small enough tuba, you can get the right sounds out of that. And I'm playing too.
Brilliant. So your first job was in the Scottish Opera, sort of, and you've already just said a little bit about that experience. But that was also what you were studying, I presume, at the Royal Northern. How did you sort of juggle your studies and your professional work?
Well, I got the job pretty much at my third year, beginning of my third year. No, January of my third year, so I was halfway through. But I did a lot of miles up and down the M6 and the A74, up and down to Glasgow. But as a tuba player, I was only working, 3-4 days a week most of the time, because the repertoire in that opera company, it only changed every few months. So if I was only in, one or two of the operas, it was easy. I just did a lot of travelling. And the only thing I really went back to college for were to pick up some tuba lessons every now and again with Stuart, my teacher. By the way, my teacher was Stuart Roebuck, and he was a legend, absolute legend. Without him and Nigel, I would not be doing this. And most of the other things at college I'd already finished. I think college is a lot busier now than it was when I was there. I mean, I did the graduate course, which is the equivalent to the degree course, and I'd completed oral, harmony, all those sort of things in the first year, more or less. So I was really left to focus on my playing. And then I remember having to take time off to go back and do my actual diploma recitals. But it was like I made it work. I just travelled a lot. And Stuart was very accommodating. I mean, we didn't have as many lessons as I probably should have had, but he tried to help me out by fitting me in around his and my schedule. But I think you can make things work if you're proactive at it.
Definitely. I think teachers definitely have the biggest influence on us as players and also people. Which I'm sure you've also taken that through to your students as well. So you just mentioned you had to go back for various recitals. Solo repertoire. How do you go about learning a piece or performing a piece? So what's your process?
My process for learning and performing pieces. Let's have a think. Well, okay. Last week, I was doing a masterclass in Colombia. You mentioned earlier. The rep list arrived in the early hours of that morning, and normally I feel like pretty confident that I know most of the tuba solo rep, but they came up with a piece I didn't know. It's just here, actually, funnily enough, on my thing, and so I had a little bit of a panic here, thinking, Christ, I'm going to have to demonstrate something that's quite twiddly with a few hours' notice. So I sat down with it, and I sort of, before listening, because I thought I'm not going to listen to it yet, I'm going to try and play through some of this. And luckily it was it's called Variations in an Olden Style, and I missed it somewhere along the way. I never learnt it. And it's a Tommy Stevens piece written for the guy in LA, Roger Bobo, who was amazing, very flexible. So I sat down with it, and I sort of just worked out any unusual intervals, worked out the rhythms, make sure I could play all the basics of it. Decided about the style, because it's sort of Baroque style. So my distant past came back to help me, and having done quite a lot of Bach on the tuba as well as on the cello, that definitely helped me point me in the direction of where I thought it should go. And then having sort of tootled through that for about an hour or two, I thought I'd better have a listen, just in case I'm missing something serious here. So I listened to Roger do it. It's really annoying because he's brilliant. And I thought, okay, I'm not that far off the mark. So I worked my way through it, made sure that my tempos were not too wayward, and I wasn't over-romanticizing it, which a lot of people over-romanticize that kind of music. And it's not as if I'm trying to be a Baroque purist, because as a tuba player that'd be bloody stupid. He's stealing music. And so I'd like to think that by the time I got to do the class, which was in the evening for me, I'd made a pretty good fist of it. So I think you can learn things pretty quickly if everything technically you have in place already. If you're trying to sort out the technique, then if I couldn't have done the technical side of that piece, I no way could have turned it around in a few hours. So by my method of practice, which I know some people would probably disagree with, but my method of practice makes sure that I still maintain the technical facility and flexibility all the time. So I don't have to go searching for it. I don't have to go and worry about, can I multiple tongue this? Can I get my fingers around that? Because I'm doing it every day. So the repertoire side, yeah, it fell into place.
That's great. That's definitely something to think about when practicing and learning rep. It's actually picking something that is within your technical capabilities, which is something that I could say on camera but maybe not do in practice. So I need to think about that a bit more. That's great. So as a tuba player in a symphony orchestra, what is your favourite symphony and why?
Can I have two?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My favourite symphony to perform as a tuba player would probably be Prokofiev 5. And I was lucky enough to record all of the Prokofiev symphonies over the last few years with our principal conductor, Kirill. So I loved it. So it's great, big tuba, big soaring tuba bass lines that are independent of the trombone section, supporting the basses, or I'd like to think the basses are supporting me. that sort of element to it, and you're just given freedom by Prokofiev to be a musician and to completely have your own lines, and it's just wonderful to play. It's never particularly difficult, which is also good, but it's exposed, so you've got to be comfortable playing on your own. It's good, quite often very breathy, which I still like to work hard at. One of the things that I should mention as an aging tuba player is that gets harder, not easier, to get the air, to keep good air, because everything starts to get a bit. Yeah, I take more breaths now than I probably ever have done. But I think one of the other pieces that I love to perform, and it's not so much because of what I get to play in it, it's just got one of those moments, and it's Mahler 2, The Resurrection. I've been really lucky to play it a lot in my career. And yeah, presumably most of you will know Mahler 2. It's got some great bits to play, and you bang away at it, you play for about an hour, and then you all stop, and the chorus come in on this chord. And that's one of the moments where I can still get the little hairs on the back of my neck go up. And there's not many of those moments left for me. But that one never fails, that bit where everything stops, you've all had a really good workout, and the chorus come in on these chords. And you're like, yeah, that's why I do this.
It's definitely arguably one of the most glorifying moments in musical writing, especially symphonic writing. And what Mahler achieves emotionally through sound is, I, as cheesy as saying, life affirming. It really is. Performing that with the choir and the trombones, and then the trumpet comes in. It's just an absolute emotional ride that he takes you on, and I think that's a lot of people who agree with you that Mahler 2 is possibly one of the best symphonies, or even Mahler one of the greatest symphonists. So that's
you're absolutely right, and I love performing all the Mahler symphonies. But in my first job, when I got the first piece I played professionally, actually the first two pieces, one was Rigoletto, which was just really fun and twiddly, and the other was Tosca. And
yes.
I thought my whole career was going to be playing music like that. Well, actually, Tosca is an amazing piece of music. Absolutely wonderful writing. And combining that as one of the most complete art forms you'll ever get, which is opera, that was such a fantastic experience as a 20-year-old. But I did think it was all going to be like that. Sadly, not all music is quite as inspirational as Mahler, Tosca, Prokofiev. But we still have to play every piece as if it's the best piece in the world. And you
I think that's definitely
play
something that we need to think about. I think I read somewhere, performing music, it's not your job as a musician to tell the audience whether you like it or not. It's to show the audience that you love it regardless. And I think that's definitely as a vocation, we should be playing as passionately as possible for literally everything.
Oh, absolutely. And there's also, as we get a lot of senior members of orchestras, and you go, not Shaik 5 again, not Shaik 4. But there's people, they are brilliant works. The reason we play them again, not the New World. As a tuba player, I hate the New World because I play 14 notes in the second movement. What was he thinking? But we have to remember that somebody out in the audience is hearing it for the first time, and they're going to be blown away by it. And if we spoil that by any negativity, we should be chucked out.
Definitely.
I
think that's definitely
their experience
definitely
of
the
the first time
mindset.
is wonderful.
I mean, the first time I saw the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra was, I'm very certain that it was one of the heroes and superheroes concerts. It was a school trip that we went up to Exeter, and some of the playing in that, I know that you guys do that sort of program quite often, but I just remember Chris Avison playing Dances with Wolves, and that bit at the end. and I still I smile at it now. Like the quality, he's probably played it uh, loads of times because it's a very popular piece, I guess, to program for an event like that. Um, but for me, that's definitely inspired me to even study at the Royal Welsh College of Music, because I know that somebody like him has had the education. So yeah, I think your job and sort of how you do it definitely affects the audience, as a, and especially someone as impressionable as I was when I was 15. Is definitely definitely something to think about when you're actually playing yourself. And so you just got a couple of questions left. Um, what do you listen to as a musician to so I might have to listen to orchestral rep if I was doing an orchestral rep exam, or in my spare time I might listen to some jazz or some funk. I'm big into Tower of Power at the moment. So what do you personally listen to in your day-to-day life?
I would tend to. I listen to quite a lot of jazz, actually. I love it. I'm not. I can't. I'm crap at trying to do jazz. I'll have a go, but I'm not very good at it. So I'm sort of. Whenever I do get to work with jazz musicians, I'm in awe of them for the freedom they have, and I love listening to really good quality jazz. I think that would probably be my first choice. Or I would tend to listen to Baroque music, maybe string Baroque music. Yeah, I'd say it's fairly wide ranging. It's very rare I would sit and listen to big symphonic works. I got to say, I think that'll come back when I stop doing it for a job. I'm hoping it will, anyway.
Yeah, I guess that there's definitely um, there should be a change between your personal life and your work life. I think maybe with your listening, you might feel the same. If you're experiencing that sort of sound world all of the time, it can get a bit monotonous.
Hmm. I like
So
that
that
clean sort of. I like the clean feeling of Vivaldi or Bach, or I like that, or I like Mozart too. I enjoy listening to Mozart. I think for me that's so different from what I do in my day-to-day job, as is the jazz thing. Although I've done some jazz with Participate, actually, getting sent out with people like Herbie Flowers and Mike Hatch, which was eye-opening for me because they didn't need anything written down ever. But so for me, yeah, it's a clean feeling and it gets me away from my day-to-day job musically.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to this next question. Um, so that's how sonically, I guess, you would go about separating work from life balance. Sort of, how else would you, what do you do in your spare time to sort of distance yourself from tuba?
Well, my wife and I, we run a small holding, so we breed quite a lot of poultry. I mean, at this exact moment in time, I'm watching my turkeys. I'm looking out the window and I'm thinking, I've got a whole load of turkeys that have just got into the tree, so I'm going to have to go and sort that out in a minute. So yeah, we grow a lot of our own food. We breed a lot of our bees, chickens, turkeys. Yeah, there's a lot going on out there, and so I have no spare time. I also run a pheasant shoot, which a lot of people will. I know I'll probably get hate mail about, but it's very small scale, and it's for people that can't afford to go pheasant shooting with the hobnobbing people. It's run on a shoestring, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of guys getting together for a bit of banter, and girls actually. Um, so those are the things that I tend to do in my free time. I live in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, so most of my free time is soaked up by country pursuits,
I also
which is
I'm from
actually which
Cornwall.
is sorry, which I was going to say, which is a great balance to the discipline of my performing life.
Yeah,
What you said
definitely.
before?
I'm from South Cornwall, and I also from a very rural area, um, and sort of having that space is great for when even when practice is going well, or even practice isn't going well, just to be able to
Yeah.
get back out there. And for me, I got into running since lockdown. Um, I did a charity thing, and that sort of kept me going. So yeah, it's definitely good to get outside and sort of experience nature, I guess. Sort of how it is. So why I really thank you for your time today. Just one final question: if you could give any advice to brass players, what would it be?
My advice to brass players is to discover discipline in your practice. Bring discipline to your practice, that will bring discipline to your performance. And I would say that that's the most important thing I discovered for myself the hard way. And that enabled me and has enabled me because it's quite easy to get good, but to stay good's quite hard, especially if you're thinking over a long, like 40 years. So find that discipline in your playing and start and enjoy your practice. Don't think of practice as a battleground. Think of it as something to enjoy. I like practicing. It sounds weird, I know. I get laughed at by some of my colleagues, but I actually enjoy practice.
It's great to have that little space that you're working on yourself and your own playing,
Mm.
so that you feel a bit more comfortable in the workplace. I think that's kind of what the essence of practice is for, I guess, a professional like yourself. Um, so I just want to say for myself, grateful, very grateful for your time this morning. You said a lot of great things that we can all think about, from practice to a little bit about auditions, um, and even then at the end, a bit of listening. Um, it's all things to think about, and I hope that our viewers can use some of your tips in their day-to-day life practice. So thank you very much, Andy. It's been an absolute pleasure. So that's a wrap on episode 2. A big thank you to Andy for sharing his time and experience with us, and I hope that you can be inspired by his work and use his practice guide to help you to structure your own practice. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to receive notifications when a new video is released, and follow us on social media at Brassbites. If you have any comments, just leave them below or email us at brassbites@outlook.com. But for now, keep blowing, and I'll see you next time.